ahead, Karen.
Thanks so much, Sarah, and thank you for moderating as well. And it's such a privilege to join with the other speakers and also with those in the room in Toronto. So thank you so much. One of the things that is important in mobilizing is to have the research and the information in place that will support these local grassroots mobilization, things like what Hannah mentioned with Elbit and the Scotiabank. And so I'm going to speak about a couple of examples fairly briefly, just to sort of work and provide that information. And one of those areas is related to divestments. And about 5 years ago, the Canadian BDS Coalition decided to begin work related to the Canada Pension Plan. This built on work that had been done some years before related to work from the Coalition Against Arms Trade here in Canada. And as part of this work, we worked with others who had undertaken similar work related to the Canada Pension Plan and other pension plans in areas such as fossil fuels, mining injustice, resource privatization, and other areas. These groups came together, we learned from each other, and we looked to find areas of common ground. As part of the work, we undertook an analysis of the Canada Pension Plan, and we used tools such as the United Nations database of companies that are complicit with the occupation, as well as the American Friends Service Committee Investigate database that also has a more comprehensive list. And we used that to do a full analysis of the Canada Pension Plan and its investments. That work has provided the basis for various campaigns over these last 5 years, including activists all across Canada going to the stakeholder meetings that the Canada Pension Plan are required to hold every 2 years, doing that in 2022 and again this last fall in 2024, raising questions and bringing the specifics to the attention of the Canada Pension Plan leadership. The work also led to, about 3 years ago, doing a similar analysis related to the Quebec Pension Plan. And that work has led to one MLA or member of the Legislative Assembly in Quebec bringing the information forward 2 times as part of the review of the Quebec Pension Plan in the Quebec legislature. All of this work is related in information being provided to the United Nations as part of their call out for information related to complicity of business and financial enterprises. And so in this case for us here in Canada, it's also been picked up in coverage, press coverage, and meetings by Montreal activists with the Quebec Pension Plan, the Quebec Pension Plan leadership. And last summer, groups of activists actually set up an encampment just a block or so away from the Quebec Pension Plan offices to have a focus on the Quebec Pension Plan. So this kind of work leads to that kind of mobilizing, which I think is so very, very important. Related to the Canada and Quebec Pension Plan also is their investments in a company in Montreal, WSP, which is a transnational engineering company that is the project manager for the Jerusalem Light Rail. This company, for some reason, was not put onto the UN list at the time, United Nations list of companies complicit. And so in 2022, Just Peace Advocates, along with the Palestinian Human Rights Organization, Al-Haq, made a submission to the United Nations to have WSP added to that to the UN list. We updated that again this past year, and we hope that when the UN list is updated, the WSP could be and would be included in that list. But the thing also with this work is that this has led those who were speaking out about the Canada Pension Plan and those Montreal activists and Quebec activists that have been working on the Quebec Pension Plan to also to be able to bring forward this information about WSP. We've also found through some of the universities that have disclosed that they also have investments in WSP. So this kind of research, this kind of information in the background provides those tools and that information that can allow for mobilization. The same approach was used in terms of analysis and to look at another 8 public sector pensions that actually do disclose, are required to disclose through their filings with the United States Security Commission, as well as several other pensions where we've been able to get disclosure. Also, the 5 big banks, including Scotiabank that Hannah has spoken about, and other financial institutions such as Desjardins and some insurance companies, and even a few universities where there has been disclosure. So these kinds of tools allow for that sort of look at the whole portfolio and to assist to have that information, not just for member groups of the Canadian BDS Coalition and international BDS allies, but for the broader movement as well. So this has allowed us to basically have an understanding of that complicity through investments, but to allow for education from for the interested public and allow for that grassroots to begin here locally and here in Canada. But even beyond that, very recently we had an artist-based group who's been very focused on environmental issues from another country, who is actually taking a campaign forward related to one of our Canadian big 5 banks, and using our material, and probably will be working with us. So it's really interesting how these kinds of things come together through having that information available. Another area that we have focused on in regard to following the money specifically is our Canadian tax-paying money. And those of us paying Canadian taxes are subsidizing a number of Canadian charities that are sending funds to support the Israeli military settlements and other efforts of the pro-Israel activities that are not compliant with our own income tax law and often not compliant with international and or other Canadian domestic laws. This work actually started when a report was put out by the group that BANA is part of, the Good Shepherd Collective, called Defund Racism. And it looked at identifying a number of supposed charities, organizations, settler organizations, and others in occupied Palestine, and identifying those that are supported by Western charities. So that led us to say, here in Canada, we need to figure out what are the conduits that are providing that funding to those settlement groups. And so from that, through access requests and other public information that's available, we have been able to work on several dozen of these sorts of charities and bring that information forward. We've been able to work with a number of other groups inside and beyond the coalition who have specific interests in this work. And as just one example, last September on International Charities Day, the United Nations International Charities Day, there were groups that mobilized in over 20 locations at Canada Revenue Agencies of the 50 or so offices in Canada. So that kind of mobilization and interest is really, really so important. So there are, just very quickly, a couple other tools I do want to point out that the coalition has that are available for activists and consumers. One is the database of shame and boycott. And while we do really want to make sure that there are targets, it's also important that we have the choice to be able to make those decisions ourselves. And of course, lots of folks will be using many of the apps and such that are available. In terms of the Canadian BDS Coalition and international BDS allies, we've worked to compile lists both from within the Canadian context of things that we have worked on, but also bring in from many other resources such as whoprofits.org and other organizations to identify those. And it's a grassroots effort, so anybody can contribute to flagging, providing information about those companies, due diligence, and some research is done before they are at it. And sometimes those result in infographics or even campaigns that will follow. We also do have an apartheid-free list of businesses and organizations, and we encourage businesses and organizations to self-identify and be put onto the apartheid list. And of course, over the last year, there's much more interest in that. It's sad that it is a genocide that brings that interest forward, but I do encourage businesses to speak up where they are willing to identify themselves as apartheid-free. Another resource I will just mention is Just Peace Advocates does have a legal and tactical guide. It's possible the people in Toronto have already heard about that from our friend Shane Martinez earlier today, but I'll put links for that and other things into the chat after I'm finished speaking. But that guide also has some specific information, legal and tactical, related to boycott, divestment, and sanctions, and gives some of the history and some of the legal cases as well. So that is important. So over the years, just to wrap up, over the years, the work of the coalition has been to echo the campaigns of our member groups to feel that we can do that work stronger by combining with the work across the country, and also to work together to come up with campaigns that are important. And this means that we've been able to do campaigns that are based on the local context, but also be very nimble in our ability to sort of move as opportunities come up and are forward. And so really our focus has been about being able to make choices, be able to do education. And as Hannah has said, we haven't been really that focused on victories. Sometimes they do occur, like the Raptors not going to Israel, or the Air Canada contract being canceled 2 years into the 5-year contract with Israeli Aerospace Industries that Hannah mentioned, or others. But mainly our focus is building capacity, building relationships, and building awareness to how we can work together for the liberation of Palestine. So thanks so much, and back over to you, Sarah.
Thank you so much,